What is up? What is up? What is up, ladies and gentlemen? This is Robert Graves bringing you another episode of Year of the Vet. And Year of the Vet is a platform created to bring stories of veterans that have gone through the whole process of transition. Not necessarily good, not necessarily bad, but it's their story about how they got to where they are today. And I try to bring you veterans that have stories of a plethora of things. Today happens to be an actress slash mother slash advocate for the community, whether that community is the veteran community or the community that she lives in. Jenn Marshall brings just a plethora of good-heartedness to the conversation, and I'm excited to share that conversation with you. But before we get into the conversation, a little bit of business. Year the Vet is on most social media platforms, all that I'm worried about: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat. Year of the Vet is also on all major podcast platforms. So if you are listening to this from Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Play, there's really no reason that you cannot get attached to Year the Vet. So be sure that you let your friends know that Year the Vet is a platform. It's a podcast that is here for you. It's a podcast that is accessible, and there is no reason that you cannot listen. So definitely share this out. And remember that there's still a lot of time to donate a book to a vet. Please visit yourthevet.com/donate to see the campaign to try to get a few 100,000 books out to veterans to help them transition properly and give them an advantage to a world that is a strange thing to them. Speaking about strange things, this guest that we have on today has an IMDb bio that is longer than my service record, and believe me, that is long. Jennifer Marshall has been in the film and television industry for a while and can currently be seen on Stranger Things on Netflix as Max's mom. Her film career has started in 2005 and it's still in snowball effect, and it's getting bigger. Soon she'll be debuting on Hawaii Five-0. She's even worked on a film with Mr. Harry Potter himself, not Harry Potter. And I'm extremely excited to have Jennifer Marshall join us today and give us some insight about her backstory into, the world of Hollywood, and then give some tips to those who are looking to get into the world of Hollywood. However, as usual, I don't like to stay on the surface of topics, and we start talking about other things, such as being a veteran parent. And not only just being a veteran parent, but being a veteran parent to two adopted young boys who are 9 years apart. We talk about gratitude and how that works into optimizing success throughout your day and being happy and grateful. We talk about the word difficulty and how it relates to different aspects of our lives. We talk about being a role model and what a veteran looks like. But I won't give away our whole conversation here, as I usually do. What I do ask is that if something piques interest here, shoot on over to yourthevet.com/ I'm sure it's going to be Jennifer Marshall. Just shoot on over, look for her conversation, and all the show notes will be right there. All the links to get connected with Jennifer will be right there. And, shoot over and just let her know that you listen to the podcast and like some of the work that she's done in the community and or television. So with that being said, let's introduce Miss Jennifer Marshall to Year the Vet.
Hello.
Okay, we're both recording now. Yes. Small victories.
Right.
What's up?
Not much. I'm sitting here eating kale.
Did you say kale?
Yeah. It's like borderline disgusting, borderline great. I don't know. I haven't figured it out.
Is it like dehydrated and salted?
Yeah.
Okay. I get down with this seaweed.
I haven't tried it.
What?
The idea of it is gross to me, but maybe I should try
it. Yeah, they sell it in like little packets at Trader Joe's, the dehydrated seaweed and salted. There was one wasabi, and I was like, oh, this is spicy. Anyway.
I gotta do it.
Yeah, pull the trigger. If you're eating kale, you can eat seaweed.
All right, that's good to know. It took me a while to eat kale, but now I'm good with it.
Okay. Pimp.
Great.
How are you doing? Besides eating kale.
I have no complaints.
Good. Is that
No complaints.
is that normal for you?
I try to live my life in gratitude. I really do.
Nice.
There's so many things we could complain about, but honestly, nah.
Have you always been like that?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I've always been that way, but I think that in the last 10 years, I've noticed how well my life has gone when I choose to live that way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would never go back to being, not that I complained a lot before, but I just would never go back to that.
No, I hear it. So my background's in sport and performance psychology. So peak performance psychology is kind of like my deal.
Mm-hmm.
I was just out at West Point interning over the summer. And even before that, I have this background in NLP and hypnotherapy. And even before that, I had this, like, I want to say lunatic mother that tried every religion possible. So,
oh gosh.
yeah, I was very exposed to a lot of that stuff like early on. And then as I grew older, I started understanding it more. And one of the things that I've kind of promised myself is to practice what I preach, right? And so
Yeah.
if I teach people like, oh yeah, you should be living in gratitude, write down, 3 things you're grateful for every day and create a mantra that gives you power, that whole stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I started doing it myself. And yeah, the feeling you get when hard things come is different, right? It's not like, oh, well, the gratitude training helps me now. Well, it does, but it also, when things are going bad, you're like, well, you know what? I woke up on the right side of the ground this morning, and I was able to pay my bills today. And yeah, so that's actually helped me a lot with my own transition. So
yeah, you have to concentrate on the positive, because I've read things that, constantly being upset and constantly complaining, it kind of rewires your brain in not a good way. So I'm always thankful, like I had knee surgery and I had some other issues that cropped up as a result of that. But I was like, you know what? I'm happy that I live in a country where I can have knee surgery in a sterile hospital. And,
yeah,
it's just, I always try to find the silver lining in things. You have to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a good way to kick this off. So
yeah,
that's awesome. Jenn, thank you so much for being patient enough to get on the show, and then working with me to get here. And thank you for joining You're the Vet and being a part of the family. So
yes, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh man, it's been a pleasure because we've connected through social media, it's not something new to me, but the thought of being able to reach out to somebody and then carry on business that way is amazing, which is something that I try to teach vets who are looking to ask questions in industries that they're looking to move into. Like, just reach out on social media. So the fact that we got connected through that is a testament to the fact that works. So I'm excited for this conversation because of that. I'm also excited for this conversation because of who you are in the industry you're in and what you bring to the table. So why don't you give the You're the Vet family a taste of who pre-Navy Jenn is?
Pre-Navy. I am from a small town in Colorado, and at the time it had 1 stoplight. I think now it has 3 stoplights. And it's a beautiful place, definitely. But when you're in high school, you want things to do and you want exciting places to go. And that just kind of wasn't the thing. So Friday nights, a lot of people would just go up in the woods and drink on Fridays. And I soon realized, after a few months of kind of doing the campfire in the woods thing on the weekend, that this isn't going to get me anywhere. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be sitting around the same town, at 25, 30, just doing the same old thing and going to rodeos and, hanging out at 7-Eleven. That's not really what I wanted to do. So as soon as the recruiter called me, it was basically just a race of whoever could get to me first. And it happened to be the Navy recruiter. So I signed up as soon as I could. I signed up. Help, get me out of here.
So the amount of accolades you stand here with today, like when you went to college, you are part of sororities and honor societies. Were you, I guess, working for prestige in your childhood as well?
It was difficult. I had kind of a hard childhood. So I did notice that if I just kept myself busy and I focused on, especially in high school, I tried to keep myself busy and focus on getting out of, the house I was in and the town I was in.
Gotcha.
And so being busy,
Yeah.
I guess came with accolades, but it was a coping mechanism. So in high school, I played basketball. I was a cheerleader. I was vice president for an organization called HOSA, which is Health Occupation Students of America. I was the Colorado vice president. I went to nationals for that organization. I competed at nationals. It was just a way for me to be out of the house and to keep my eye on the prize and realize that, once I was 18 and I could do whatever I wanted to do, my life was then in my own hands.
Yeah.
So I guess those things came with accolades, but I am not sure that that's necessarily what I was seeking at the time.
So being busy kind of led into an unknown perfectionism.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, I would say, I would, oh gosh. Yeah, I'm definitely type A. I'm a type A personality. And I just feel if you're going to do something, do it well or don't do it. I live by a mantra that there is no try.
Yeah.
It's just you do something or you don't do it.
Yeah.
You can say, well, I tried, but trying's kind of irrelevant at the end of the day.
Yeah. Okay, so with that being said, right, would you equate trying to doing? Like, look, I tried, so I attempted.
No.
No?
No.
So it's
it's very black and white with me.
You climbed Kilimanjaro or you didn't. You didn't you didn't get to base camp.
But, I feel like with things like that, if you don't make it because of weather or you don't make it because of something, you can always say, I'm going back to attempt it again.
Yeah.
And so that is doing that as well as doing, because you're planning for the next, the last half marathon I did, I wasn't in love with my time.
Yeah.
I still did it.
Yeah.
There's, it's do or don't do it. But this next time I'm going to attempt a better time. So would I say I'm trying for a better time? I mean, in theory, I guess, but I'm still running the marathon, the half marathon, which I've learned is, less than 1% of people or something who actually do that. So I try to keep things in perspective. I'm never going to win a half marathon or a marathon ever.
What? I don't believe that.
I won 2 5Ks, and that's probably the extent of that.
See, you have conflicting beliefs in yourself.
I definitely think that, and I just want to specify, I only run half marathons because I can justify that as sporty, but I feel like full marathons are insane. So I could definitely, if it's something where I said, hey, when I hit 40 in a few years, I want to do this and I want to train and I want to do really well. And I could find a smaller half marathon where there's not as many competitors.
In Colorado, and then laugh in their faces and shake your face and say, take that three light city.
I mean, I could have success doing something like that, but then again, I have to be realistic. I have children and they come first, and the amount of Jennifer that I would have to put into that sort of endeavor, it's not really worth it right now. Now, could I win a half marathon maybe when I'm in my 60s, in my age range? Sure.
I want to know, when you win your first half marathon, you have to reach out to me and say, it happened.
It'll be like 25 years from now.
That's fine.
Say.
25 years from now, that's fine. I'll take it.
I did it. I did the half marathon and I won.
And I'm like, put your teeth back in. Okay, so the Navy picked you up. They were lucky enough to catch you first. And that means that if whoever reached out first, whether Coast Guard, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, you would have went. So you went.
I'm not sure about the Coast Guard.
Okay.
I don't. I support everyone's service, and I think that we're all important. But I'm not even sure if when I went in, I think the Coast Guard was still under the Department of Transportation, so I don't even know if it was actually considered part of the Department of Defense. I would have to look it up, but and it wasn't even really that well known because I lived in a landlocked state. So while I knew that the Coast Guard existed, I don't even know if there was a recruiting office or anything.
Yeah. Now you're showing your age.
I know.
So how was that for you? Leaving your small town of Colorado and being introduced to a larger world. What was that like?
It was so eye-opening. And I tell this story from boot camp just to illustrate how completely naive I was to the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'd only been on an airplane twice prior to going to boot camp. Once was for my grandmother's funeral, and another time was to go to nationals for the organization where I was competing in nationals. So it was my third time being on an airplane when I went to boot camp. And I remember there was a girl in my boot camp division, and I wasn't sure what she was. She had looked what her ethnicity was. She looked kind of like a mix of Hispanic and Asian. And I remember asking her, "Where are you from?" And she said, "I'm Filipina." And I had no idea. I knew that the Philippines existed, but I'd never met a Filipino or a Filipina in my life.
Yeah.
And in the Navy, there are so many Filipinos because we had a base there. But I just remember feeling so stupid when I asked her, "Okay, so you're from the Philippines. How does that work? How do you come here?" And the fact that I was 17 years old and I'd never seen a Filipina in my life.
Yeah.
And the town that I grew up in, or the town that I went to high school in, had one African American. So I was really just kind of sheltered, and coming into the Navy just expanded my world and made me a better version of me.
Yeah.
And it really showed me that, when I got to my ship, there was a black guy from the Bronx, and there was a corn-fed white country redneck type guy from Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And they were best friends.
Yeah.
And I remember that was the beauty of the Navy that I served in, was it didn't matter. What mattered was your rank. People would treat you like trash depending on your rank.
Yeah. Yeah.
Depending on your rank, they would.
Yeah.
But that was kind of, I saw people of all races and creeds and religions and both genders just working together for one goal. And that to me was just so beautiful. It's part of why I loved the military.
Yeah. And so what did you do in the military that would prepare you for where you are today?
I wouldn't say that my jobs specifically in the military, I worked in aviation logistics, and then I worked on the Ship Security Defense Force, and I was on the repair locker fire team. Those were two of my very intensive collateral duties that took up a lot of time, even more so than my job at certain times. And I would say those things really haven't translated to a career in film and television. What does translate is everything that you learn in the military. And I've always told people, we will not be the youngest coming into the business. We will not be the best looking. We will not be the most well-connected, but we can outwork most civilians.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of what we learn in the military. We learn motivation and work ethic, and half the time you don't even have all the tools you need to succeed. And people will say you just need to figure it out and just make it happen. And we do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how we do, but we do.
Yeah.
So I've tried to apply that.
Dumb luck.
Oh, yeah. Dumb luck, sometimes stupidity, sometimes, you get the homie hookups where you're calling everybody that "Hey, do you have this? Can you help me out?"
Yeah.
But yeah, all of those things have served me very, very well in this career.
Yeah. So you served for 5 years.
Yes.
Now, at what point did you realize that the Navy was no longer serving purpose for you?
I never realized that, and I don't even know if I necessarily realize that now. I would be retiring this year.
This year? Oh, so you went in about 98.
Yeah, 99.
99.
So I would be retiring, okay, so I guess early.
Yeah.
I don't know if they do it off the delayed entry program date or if they do it off active duty date. I would be retiring as in I'm at the age where I could retire now.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I don't know. I ended up getting out because I had an adverse reaction to the anthrax vaccinations.
Oh.
Yeah, so I had always thought when I was in, my best friend and I I said, I'm going to be the chief of naval operations, and you're going to be my master chief petty officer of the Navy. And literally, that's what we thought. I was a third class petty officer, and she was a seaman. And I remember that's what we thought, and that was our plan.
Yeah.
And, life's pretty funny, but that's where we thought we would be in 30 years.
Yeah.
That's not where we ended up. Now we're wives and we're mothers, and we're both married to other sailors. But at the time, you're 17, 18 years old, and you think you have your life planned out.
I hear it. My best friend, well, there were three of us, but one of them joined in 99, like you. And he went AWOL.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, he went AWOL for his high school sweetheart, who is no longer in his life. And but he would sit there, like, while I'm asleep, he would be over me like, "You're not gonna make it." He was like, "It's not for you." And it was for me. It was like my thing. You know, I thought I was going to do 20 as well. Not anywhere in my mind did I ever think 30, but I knew 20 was for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that anthrax shot is no joke, man. I still talk about it today. For me, this is how I describe it. It's like getting a noogie by your oldest cousin in your arm for like 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's pretty painful.
It dropped me to my knees every single time I got it.
It's pretty painful, and I don't know if you had the same side effects, but for a lot of us, it would leave these lumps that almost felt like rocks in our arms for extended periods of time.
Yeah.
And every time I would try to massage the rock or try to massage something to make it feel better, it would just make me nauseous.
Oh, no.
So I just walked around with the, lumps in my arms for weeks on end.
So what adverse side effects were you having?
I got the first shot, and this is the most ironic thing. I remember standing in line, and somebody was passing around I think it was an Air Force Times, and we always used to call the Army Times, Marine Corps Times, Air Force Times, Navy Times. We used to call it propaganda.
Yeah.
So we would say, like, "Hey, can I borrow the propaganda?" And somebody was reading it, and it was about someone who had refused to get the anthrax shots, and he had been court-martialed.
Yeah.
And I remember making fun of this person. I don't know if this is karma or what, but I was so naive. I think I was 19 or 20, and I was like, "Oh, the government would never use us as guinea pigs. The government,
Yeah.
So I remember making fun, like, "Oh, I'm afraid I'm going to get sick. No, this isn't tested." And I was kind of making light of the situation.
Yeah.
And now I look back on that and I think, oh gosh, how horrible of me and how misguided I was. After the first shot, I just felt like I had the flu, but I didn't put two and two together.
Yeah.
And then after the second shot, I was like, wow, I'm really not getting better. And so I thought it was mono. And after the third shot, it just got worse and worse and worse. And then I was up for my sixth shot. Ugh. And I went to the senior medical officer on board and I said, "Sir, I know that there's no waivers," because the Department of Defense was like, "There's no waivers. That's not how it happens."
Yeah.
And they had told us, the DOD said no waivers. So
yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So I remember I went to him and I said, "I just asked that you look at my medical record because I was literally never in medical before I started getting these. And I'm starting to think that they're making me sick."
Yeah.
And he looked at everything, and I remember the lieutenant said, "No, we have to give it to her." And the senior medical officer, who was a commander or captain, he said, "No, this is ridiculous. I'm signing off on this. Look at what this is doing to her. Look at her record before and look at her record now." And I was just so appreciative.
Yeah.
And I had taken orders to another command at Fort Monroe. It was a FEMA Joint Forces command. And I ended up having to turn those orders down and just get out because I couldn't even drive for more than 20 minutes without nodding off.
Yeah.
And I just had flu aches all over my body, which is horrible when you have the flu, but imagine having it for an extended amount of time.
Yeah.
And the nerves in my body were just going crazy and firing off randomly. So I would have these random pains that would bring me to my knees.
Yeah.
And
you had anthrax.
I would have rather have had anthrax at that point.
Yeah.
So it was just really bad. And I remember them saying at the time, the Navy was like, "We didn't do that. And that's not what happened." And then the VA was like, "Oh, yes, we did that. Sorry about that."
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, we did that. Come here. And then a few years ago, they had released a list of commands that had gotten, and I don't know what they mean by a bad batch, a tainted batch of anthrax shots, or I'm not sure what they mean by bad. That could mean anything.
Yeah.
And my ship was the only ship on that list.
Oh, no.
So it was kind of vindicating, but at that point it was, 10 years removed.
Yeah.
And I literally wanted to call everybody up at that command who said, "No, that's not a thing," and say, look.
Yeah.
They just admitted to it. We're the only ship in the fleet that got these.
Yeah. I bring this up often. It's the one thing that I hate most about the military, and I love the military. So this is saying something, is that while you're in, you are the resident expert of all that's only around you. Like You can get NJP'd or page 11 or, go up for, you guys call it quarters or whatever, right? And get in trouble or, not take care of yourself in medical. And everybody always says, oh, the strongest survive or you're bounced back or da-da-da-da. But like nobody's ever lived outside of the military because everybody joined at 17 or 18. So nobody knows. Nobody knows. So I understand that whole trying to get back and show you like, look, like I was right 10, 20 years ago. I feel vindicated. I want you to bask in my ha-ha right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it never works that way,
wish
right?
That I wasn't right.
Yeah.
I wish that I had never gotten ill, and I wish that I could have stayed in the military. So it's kind of a bittersweet ha-ha.
Yeah, it sucks. So were you med-sept?
No, I wasn't. And I think about it now, and I definitely could have fought it. At the time, I was just, I had extended because we were on deployment in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. So I had extended. I had not re-enlisted for orders, which is weird because generally you have to re-enlist. But the detailer knew that I was serious about this command, and I had been junior sailor of the quarter, and I was, I was a good sailor, so he had no reason to think that I wouldn't have stayed in. And then by the time it was time for me to re-enlist, I just said, I can't even barely drive to work. I get home and I go straight to bed and I sleep from 4 p.m. until the next morning every single day. So I just knew that I wasn't in a position to continue my career in the Navy. And I also knew that a med board, because it was mentioned to me a few times by other people, I just didn't have the energy to fight. And a med board is a lot of fighting.
Yeah.
I just didn't have the energy to do it.
Yeah. So you left on your own terms?
I did. And I got calls from the command at Fort Monroe for probably 2 years afterwards saying, when are you coming? When are you coming? When are you coming? And I said, no, I'm out of the Navy. And they said, they never filled your billet. So it was a gapped billet, and they would call me repeatedly. And I would just say, I'm so sorry, but I'm out of the Navy. Yeah. So you guys are barking up the wrong tree.
So how did you prep to leave?
I didn't prep very well, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
With not feeling well, I just pretty much knew that I had to do something, and I wasn't in a position where I could go to work. So I said, okay, I think I'm going to go to college because, we get the stipend for going every month, and this is probably something that I need to do. And I never thought that I would go to college, but I had taken the ACT a few years earlier, and I'd done really well on it. So I said, let me just try this. And so I enrolled at the local community college, and thankfully they had a vet advisor there, because if they don't have a vet in the office to help vets out, people can just get overwhelmed. You have no idea what credit hours means and what the degrees mean. I mean, a master's, a bachelor's, and associates, I had no idea which one came first. I was so clueless. I was the first college graduate with a bachelor's on my father's side and a master's on my mother's side. Nice. So college was not a thing. Yeah. And I enrolled and I started going to community college, and that was good because if I needed to miss classes, I explained to my professors about me being ill, and, they worked with me. Yeah. I had documentation, and so they worked with me. And thank goodness that we have that benefit, because where would so many vets be without that benefit?
Oh, man. Beyond yes, right. Homelessness is up, and I think it's because individuals don't have that mindset that you walked away with, like, I have this benefit, I can do something for myself. And I think a lot of people are lost today. And when I first started going back to college, my friends, my other veteran friends that I was working around, they're like, how'd you do that? Right? Like, what are you using? And they had already past that moment of use it or lose it, right?
Right.
So, I know what you're talking about, that there's a lot of individuals out there who missed that opportunity and are looking back in their lives, are like, man, I wish I would have done that. So,
and I also think, going back to the homeless issue, I also think besides the schooling, it also goes back to what you said about so many people go in at 17 and we're kind of spoon-fed by the government, and we have everything taken care of, and we don't have to worry about food or housing or anything. And then people get out, and they sometimes have a small cushion money-wise. But for the most part, we are used to having everything taken care of.
Yeah.
So we get out, and if somebody has never had a job before the military, that is quite the adjustment. And before they know it, they're not able to find a job. They're out of their savings, and they're out on the street.
So what was the biggest slap in the face when you got out?
You know, I would say, and this, you know, some people might roll their eyes when they hear this, because I've been comparatively very lucky. But coming into film and TV, I would go into offices because they would say, you know, we want a real veteran for this role. We want someone who understands what this is. We want, you know, it's hard to teach an actor how to carry yourself that way. We took months in boot camp to learn how to be a soldier, sailor, Marine, or airman. And with an actor, you can't necessarily teach them overnight. So some casting offices do see the good or the value in bringing in actors who happen to have served. Mm-hmm. Not just random vets, because you need training to be an actor like you need training for any other career, but actors who happen to have served. And I remember I would go in and I would hear from casting repeatedly, oh, that was a good audition, but you just don't look like a vet.
To you?
And I got so incensed about hearing that over and over and over, because we are just a microcosm of society. And I tried explaining to them, vets look like anyone. If you see anyone on the street, that could be a veteran. Yeah. And
it's like, you don't look like a math major. You don't look, what does that look like? Yeah.
Right. And I think for me, I took it as them not understanding that women, you know, that women serve as well. Yeah. And so I started tracking. I actually started tracking when I would go out for auditions, and overwhelmingly, they would cast white males, Hispanic males, occasionally African-American males. And this also has to do with acting level. I'm not saying they're only cast on race. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying what the numbers that I have tracked. And then for females, it would mainly be Hispanic and African-American.
For the veteran, population? Okay. Uh-huh.
For roles where they asked for veterans. Yeah. So I saw white females being overlooked and Asian males being overlooked. Uh-huh. For whatever reason it may be. And I think that people just don't have a good idea of what a veteran looks like. So for me, that was so difficult trying to come back and say, but we look like anyone else. And just because I look like this or this person looks like this, that doesn't invalidate our service.
Yeah.
So that for me was difficult. But, you know, after a few years, and things have gotten a lot better, it's a lot more inclusive now. But after a few years, I just had to see it as, you know what, I understand. They don't think that I look like a veteran, but it gets me into their office. They see that I am a talented actor, and I'm brought back for other roles.
So I want to dance around the word difficult, right?
Yeah.
So what does that mean? As a struggling, or let's not even say struggling, aspiring actress, and, you know, your list of what you've done before this moment is phenomenal, right? Like you said, bachelor degree, master's. Was that concurrent?
My master's took a little bit longer because I adopted my two boys in between. So that was literally class by class pulling teeth.
Okay. So, and that plays into the word difficult, right? Mm-hmm. Again, you did not want to get out. You got out, and then you decided to go back to school. Mm-hmm. Dancing around this word difficult, what was difficult about becoming a student vet?
I would say it was difficult because I ended up going to a liberal arts school.
Okay.
And I'm very much a fiscal conservative, but a social progressive. That was difficult for me because liberal arts schools are notoriously very left-wing. Mm-hmm. And, you know, being told that what we do as vets is wrong and it's America being imperialistic, that was very difficult for me, sitting through classes and kind of having things preached to me and seeing people who were 17, 18, 19 years old who really didn't understand life, mm-hmm. accepting everything that was said in that classroom as truth. Mm-hmm. And I have respect for several of my professors who kept politics out of the classroom, mm-hmm. and they were open to hearing different opinions. They were open to hearing different point of views. they weren't so quick to put people in a box.
Mm-hmm.
That for me was so incredibly refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say that was difficult. And then it was also difficult, the dreaded group projects, right? You're with people who have never had to really accomplish anything, some students. And there was a lot of mommying in those groups, you know? It's like, well, Jennifer's older and she has kids and she's this. And so I ended up having to be a mommy at home and a mommy in school, which was incredibly just taxing after a while.
Yeah.
You know, Robert, I don't really find things in my life difficult. You know, if I were going for a physics degree or something like that, I'm not a math and science guru, so that would be difficult, if not impossible, honestly. I just don't have the background in that.
Is it a feeling? Is it an emotion? Is it just
no? I know. You know what? I know what it is.
Okay.
It's for me, difficult is, now that I've had children, and I'm sure you can relate. You're trying to fulfill what you think is your ideal self, and you're trying to do all of these things at once, and you're thinking that you're kind of lukewarm on all of them. You're jack of all trades, master of none.
Yes. Okay.
That is so hard, because there were so many times with my kids where my husband would watch my kids as I was working on a paper or something. He would watch our kids. You know, he never says, I'm going to babysit them. You know, no, he's an equal 50-50 father, and he's a wonderful father. But I often ended up feeling like a bad mother because there were other things that I wanted to do. And then I also felt like this is important for my children to see a strong female role model in their eyes, in their lives. So when they grow up, they can marry strong women. And so I think that's what's difficult for me, is trying to do everything but do it well and not feel like you're just half-assing something, because to me, that's the worst kind of way to do something.
Yeah. Does having to play pseudo-mom to other people that aren't your children, does that bring on stress to you?
It brings on a lot of stress when I just feel like people are not living up to their full potential. And I know millennials get a lot of, they get a lot of slack nowadays, and I get that. And I've met some millennials who are amazing and wonderful and just blow me away. But then I've met other people, and, we can't really blame millennials. We have to blame the parents who raised these sort of people who are just kind of, I don't know how to function. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, gosh, at 19, I was balancing a $1 million budget on board the USS Theodore Roosevelt. Yeah. And you can barely even tie your shoes and pack your lunch.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff gets exasperating, because what are we doing? We are failing that generation of kids. And I see it now being an adult. I'm not sure what the generation under millennials is called, but I see it all the time with acquaintances of mine who they allow their children unfettered access to screens. Yeah. Starting from the time they're a baby. Yeah. My son didn't watch television until he was 3. Yeah. We just didn't allow it. Yeah. And I do get frustrated with that and find that to be difficult, because you just want so much more from people, and you want to tell them, you can kick ass. This world is your oyster. You can do all of these things. But if they're fighting, the way they're being parented from the time they're younger, it kind of doesn't even give them a fighting chance as they get older. They have to overcome so much.
Do you see that spilling over into the film and television industry?
What specifically?
With the work ethic of the younger generation seeking out to work in that industry. Do you feel that you're doing a lot of mentoring? And
No, I don't necessarily see that. What I see is, and I will preface this by saying there are many wonderful parents of actors who parent those children accordingly and who still ensure that they have a childhood as well.
Yeah.
But I have run into, and especially lately, when I'm on set, of kids talking back to directors, kids not paying attention, just kids who should not be actors, and they are being actors because their parents are pushing it.
Yeah.
And that to me is a serious, serious issue. You generally don't see those on real big budget things. So like on Stranger Things, for instance, I never saw any of that because the children are all, yes, technically they're children, but they're all mini adults and their parents are all very supportive, but they're all there because they want to be there.
Yeah.
There's been other things that I've been in and I've just thought this is horrendous. This child is clearly here because the parent wants he or she to be here. And this isn't a good environment for the child.
So let's talk about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are Max's mom on Stranger Things. That's
I am.
currently your big role, or
Mm-hmm.
currently what people know you as.
Right.
And you had to fight to get here. You've had years behind you of proving yourself and working in things that people may not have heard of, or have guaranteed not heard of.
Yep.
And that's a struggle. That's a fight. And that's, I imagine that that's difficult as well. What is it like starting from scratch, and then getting into that, fighting your way and clawing your way up?
Well, I would say that I welcomed the opportunity to start from scratch because I feel like as veterans, sometimes our community, members of our community can get a little entitled. So I will meet with people who are vets who are looking to get into the industry. And I met with one gentleman and he said, I don't want to start out as an extra. I want to start out in a speaking role because I was a gunny sergeant in the Marine Corps and I'm not starting out at the bottom.
Yeah.
And I said, Gunny, with all due respect, would you advocate for an actor who's played a gunny sergeant 5, 6, 7 times for him to go into the Marine Corps as a gunny sergeant? And he said, that's ridiculous. I said, with all due respect, what you're advocating for is ridiculous. We have to start out at the bottom, build that foundation, and come up. Because otherwise, if you don't respect the house that foundation is built upon.
Yeah.
And you don't, as an actor, you're not bringing strength to the production.
Yeah.
So I know when I go on set, because of all of the experience that I have early on in my career doing things that, some people might say, well, why would you do that? Why would you do this role? Why would you do that role? You have to start out doing small roles to even get an opportunity for large roles.
Yeah. And how did you learn that though?
I found it to be a challenge that I loved. And when other people would say to me, well, I wouldn't work on this project or that project because it's beneath me.
Yeah.
I'm just not, I just don't see things that way, because what I saw when I was coming up was, okay, I would love to work on a student film with these student directors because these students are the directors, writers, and producers of tomorrow. These students are in the top 10 film schools in the United States.
Yeah.
So to work with these students, I found it to be an honor.
Yeah.
I never found it to be a drain.
Yeah.
Or not worthy of my time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it goes back to perspective, what we were talking about earlier about the silver lining.
Yeah. And you're getting in at the ground level of people paying their dues.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I still will turn on the television and occasionally come across an episode of something that I did 7 or 8 years ago, a non-union recreation show on Discovery.
Yeah.
And that keeps me humble. I know where I came from, and I know that I have had to work very hard to where I'm at now, but I would rather have that than to come into the industry feeling entitled and be aiming for something that is not, I'm not able to get it because I haven't laid the foundation. So there are lots of people that come in and they say, well, I want this and I'm not going to accept below this. And they just spin their wheels for years on end because they are not willing to do that work from the get-go.
Gotcha. Your bio on IMDb sounds like the short introduction of, again, like a woman who's about to receive a highly prestigious award. And that is like,
oh man, who wrote that? I gotta pay them.
Right.
Damn.
So like, what's your why? What's driving you?
I would say at the end of the day, my why is to gain enough notoriety where I am able to help veterans, service members, Gold Star families. That's what I want to do. Yeah. And being an actor is a great vehicle for that. That's what I'm passionate about. That's what I live for. And being an actor is great. It's great. It's enjoyable. I wouldn't say it's my passion, but it's enjoyable. Now, when I get a really good role that's amazing and something, something that I've dreamed of, then that's definitely that. Then it's my passion. But a lot of what actors do is we're booking gigs so we can book the next gig.
Mm-hmm.
We're saying these 2 lines so we can, make a paycheck that day.
Yeah.
So any role that I book, I'm always honored because that's amazing that they chose me out of everybody, and I'm very honored.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm not doing this for fame. I'm not doing this so TMZ can follow me. I'm not, all of those things are kind of horrible in my opinion to have TMZ outside your window.
Yeah.
But if I can use my platform to bring awareness to veterans and veterans issues, that is my why, and that is what drives everything that I do.
It's funny you say that because I tend to stand up for the actors and actresses that get up and receive their awards and, use that moment as their platform. Because what happens is like, there's individuals in society who think that that is not the area. And I tend to say like, well, what is the area? If they've worked so hard to get to that point and they can't say what's on their mind and speak about, abortion or, what's going on currently in politics. Not that I'm a super political person, but like if they can't use that platform that they've worked so hard to create, then like, what is it good for? I think that's the perfect platform. So yeah, I hear what you're saying, and you've worked hard to have a voice, and the fact that
I think, Robert, the issue that I take with people standing up and using their platforms for things is, yes, it's a great thing to be able to utilize your fame for good. I just want people to keep it positive. So, if people are getting up and saying, F this person, F that person, that's not, I just don't see that as being conducive to anything.
Yeah, you're not adding value.
But I would say, right, we want to add value. And I would say when Gary Sinise gets up and talks about veterans, I don't hear those people saying, hey, get down. Why are you using your platform? You're just a stupid actor. I don't hear that.
That's a good point.
So I think that it's whatever people want to hear, then they'll criticize it. And to me, actors can get up and say whatever they want, and they can use their platform for that. I just ask that, one, they're educated about what they're talking about, they're informed, and that they do keep it positive. Instead of bashing something, say, if you're interested in helping this cause, here's the number.
Yeah.
Because you can say the same message 1,000 ways, so why not put the biggest positive spin on it to reach the most amount of people?
Yeah. And, with that being said, that is one of my banes, by the way. If you have, well, I say with that being said like 400 times, but
no worries. I say amazing like 85 times in an interview.
Okay,
fine.
So I want to move. Well, I don't want to move, but to kind of segue into you using your fame and your name as a platform, you do a lot. You do participate a lot with veteran organizations to give back to the veterans. Like, for instance, you're big into pinups for vets. And so another person that was on here, another actress on here, she promoted pinups for vets as well. And so not only do you talk the talk, but you go out and walk the walks. What is pinups for vets, and what does it mean to you?
So there are actually 4 organizations that I volunteer a lot with, veteran-wise.
Of course.
One of them is Pinups for Vets. One of them is Veterans in Media and Entertainment. Actually 5. One is Post 43 American Legion in Hollywood. And one is the Veterans Center where I live. And I don't want to say the city because I've had people show up to say hello and not ask for veteran services. And the 5th would be the Senior Center in my town, because we deliver meals to homebound seniors, a good percentage of whom are veterans or the spouse of deceased veterans.
Yeah.
So Pinups for Vets is a congressionally recognized award-winning nonprofit. We dress up as World War II era pinup girls, very modest, very colorful, and we visit veterans in hospital, nursing homes, and wounded warrior detachments. And this cause is so near and dear to my heart because there are so many veterans in these facilities for one reason or another who do not receive visitors. So sometimes it's for days, for weeks, for months. Sometimes we are their only visitor for the entirety of their stay.
Yeah.
So for me, the fact that Pinups for Vets, most of our ambassadors are either female veterans or spouses of male veterans, or just sometimes really, really enthusiastic vet supporters But a lot of us are veterans. So when we go into nursing homes or hospitals and we're talking to vets, it's that one-on-one connection where we can share stories and we have a connection. And it is such impactful work.
Mm-hmm.
Every day when I come back from volunteering with the organization, I volunteer for me as well because it makes me feel good to know that I've connected with a brother or sister that day.
Yeah.
It's definitely not just, there's lots of people who say, I do lots of volunteer work because it's important for the community.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. But people who volunteer a lot, we also do it for ourselves because it's a good feeling at the end of the day to know that there was a difference made.
Yeah. There's a lot of humility in saying that because, people tend to, they want to pad their stats when it comes to, the selfless service. But you're right. Giving back to the community, there is definitely an intrinsic value to that. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why more people don't talk about that, because I feel like if you talk about that and you acknowledge that it's a benefit for the volunteer as well, you would have more people volunteering, because I think people who are not familiar with volunteering or giving time to nonprofits, they kind of think, oh, all right, I'll go scoop this soup somewhere in this kitchen. Yeah. But they don't realize that when you leave, you feel good as well. Because most volunteers, if you go volunteer somewhere and then you feel horrible the whole day, you're not going to have a lot of people volunteering.
Yeah, exactly.
So there is definite intrinsic value to the volunteer as well.
Yeah. Operation Gratitude in Chatsworth does a very good...
I love them.
Yeah. Don't they do a phenomenal job getting everybody kind of hyped up? They've got the music going all day, and then, at the end, they do this little powwow, and they make everybody feel good about being there and participating. I think they do a really good job in including their volunteers.
Absolutely. Yeah. And another good thing is they are very open to suggestions, because some places I have volunteered in the past, if you offer a suggestion, it's kind of like, whoa, just stay in your lane. You're a volunteer. Yeah. It's like, well, but I do work with these people every day.
Yeah.
Operation Gratitude was amazing because there were some African-American females who had written back and said, is there any way we could have products for women of color in these packages, because we don't get a lot of them? And alternately, other females have said, can you send feminine hygiene products?
Yeah.
And the first thing that Operation Gratitude says is, whatever you need, we are here to help you. So absolutely, we will get these hair care products, we will get these feminine hygiene products, because they want to make sure that everyone is taken care of.
Yeah.
And I just can't say enough good things about the organization.
Do you have a favorite story working with one of the 5 that you work for? With?
Yes. Yes, I do. This was a visit that we did with Pinups for Vets. And to maintain this female veteran's anonymity, I won't say where we were, but we were at a facility, and I was sitting down talking to her for a while, and I'm not sure where the other people were, because when I'm there, I'm focused on whatever veteran I'm with. And we were sitting and talking, and she was eating, and she revealed to me, this was a woman who was in her at least 70s, and she revealed to me that she had been sexually assaulted at her command.
Yeah.
That was something that was not talked about then at all. Uh-huh. And she said, I've only told a few people close to me. I don't tell random people this. But to see the look on her face, she was so relieved. It was years later. It was 40 or 50 years later. And for her to tell another female veteran, because we had been talking stories and speaking about the military, there was just something lifted off of her chest.
Yeah.
And I felt blessed that I was there at that time to help relieve any burden she may have had. And I'm not saying I fixed it. I'm not saying she was perfect afterwards.
Yeah.
But there was something about her being able to talk to another female veteran about what she had experienced.
Yeah.
And it brings tears to my eyes thinking about that, because to hold on to such shame and humiliation, which is how she felt. Mm-hmm. And regret and all of these things that sexual assault survivors deal with for so many years, that had to be incredibly traumatic for her.
Yeah. Yeah. And to add to that, I talk about this often. There's some pretty tragic things that have happened in my life that I am very open about. And it's not that I'm open. I don't need hugs and, oh man, like you made it. I don't need any of that. What I need is for other people to embrace my story and understand that speaking the words that hurt you allow you the strength to not let those words hurt you. And what I mean by that is that if you say, for instance, I talk about, not to get like religious, but I talk about the moment where I know God is a thing, right? And
right.
It's my favorite story in the world. And when I tell it, people kind of give me this weird look at first, because it starts off, there I was smoking speed in my friend's room,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And what happened was I overdosed. And what happened was Selena came on TV. My friends were asleep, and I was doing this thing, what you call is scavenging. I was looking for any little bit of like speed that was left in this glass pipe. And in this movie, Selena came on, and I'd seen it 48 times, and I stood up to go change the channel, and then I blacked out, and I woke up in tears, and everybody was still asleep, but I woke up and I was able to pull myself up, and I said, "Dear Lord, help me off of this. I don't want to do this anymore." And this was back in the day when pagers were still a big thing, right? So
Right.
My mom pages me 911, and my buddies and I were in Venice Beach, and he was getting a 007 tattoo on his arm, and my mom paged me, 911, get home. And so what had happened, long story short, is that my best friend's mom and my mom were friends, and my best friend's mom was like the cool mom who never went into the room, but today she wanted to be a mom and started doing laundry and found his stash, called my mom. Then like I got to the house, and that was the last time I'd ever touched speed, right? And divine intervention, sure, whatever. But I think it was because I prayed to God and I heard an answer like no more than 3 hours later. It was crazy. But when I tell that story, like I can tell that story like nobody's business. I can tell that story like you reading me a grocery list. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't affect me. It is one of my favorite stories, but I tell it because it has so much power, and I don't let it hold on to me. Like there's no fear. How do I say this? There's not an ounce of me that's worried that that, because I know it's given me so much power in myself, and that it's given other people power to do good things for themselves. So when bad things happen to you, when you release them, you release a little bit of that control that they have over you. I guess that's the ultimate story from this.
Absolutely.
When I work with individuals who have PTS or that have gone through sexual traumatic experiences, and they finally are able to release that pressure, right? And that's what it feels like sometimes, right? Like pressure on your chest, or it's hard to breathe. When that emotion comes up, it becomes hard to breathe. And when you say it, it's like, oh wow, like that feels good. And you don't have to say it to everybody, but the fact that like you've released a little bit of that pressure gives you a little bit more room to breathe. And that makes you feel a little bit more optimistic about life. And that makes you feel a little more strong and in control of yourself, because you have that poise and that control back. So yeah, that was a long way of getting around to.
No, but you know what? I really have to commend you for coming forward and talking about that, because a lot of people would say, well, I'm not going to talk about that because that would make people feel a certain way about me, or, I'm at this point in my life and this is how I want to be perceived. So that takes a very strong person to say, this is where I was, and this is something that shapes who I am, and this is who I am now. Yeah.
And it goes back to what you kind of mentioned, you're generation one of, bachelors and masters on one side, right? And this is not a factual percentage, but 80% of veterans, are most likely first gen anything, first gen, high school graduates, first gen college graduates, first gen, they have their own apartment at 24. Like a lot of people are breaking the mold of what their family system used to be. And for me to have the ability to help with my story or my words, or, this podcast with you giving your story and your words. And I think, the power of the story and the power of release is super important in being successful in today's environment.
Absolutely. And I feel like in today's environment with social media and, topics being less taboo to discuss, I feel like it's kind of more accepted as well. Like people understand that some people make decisions that maybe aren't necessarily the best decisions, but that you can kind of come back from that. It's not as taboo as it was, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah, 1,000% yes. Okay, so I wrote down something that I want to end with, but before you even get there, I want to, for those who are looking to get into the industry, whether they're out of the service or they're about to get out of the service, can you talk a little bit about what to expect, some recommendations on what classes or what they should be looking to get into for great success or the greatest amount of success they can possibly get on their own? And then the third thing is like the dark side, and not necessarily like drugs and depression and suicide, but like being told no and how to deal with that. How do you deal with, the constant grind of being told no, or any other dark side you can think about?
Well, I'll probably start with the last, talking about the negative part of it, because I feel like the negative part of it you have to know prior to making a conscious decision to say you want to go into this industry. Because the first thing you have to realize is 95% of the time you'll hear no. You have to be able to deal with that, and you have to be in a position where you don't take it personally. A lot of times when you hear no, it doesn't necessarily mean you're not talented. It just means, no, we have another redhead on the show. No, I owe my friend a favor. No, the producer is, dating somebody and they want her for the role. No, you're taller than the lead. There's a lot of things that go into no, but most of the time all you hear is no. And so it's something that people start to kind of take personally, and you just can't. I always compare it to, there's like those fancy peas in a can that you can go and get, and they have the little pearl onions, and they're super fancy and they come in a gold can. But if you're going to the store and you're looking for corn, it doesn't matter how fancy the peas are. You're never going to buy those peas because you're there for corn.
Okay.
Whether it be regular corn or low sodium corn or creamed corn, you're not there for peas.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. You have to see yourself as a product, and Jennifer Marshall is very much a product. And so if somebody's not interested in Jennifer Marshall, that's fine, because someone else will come along who is interested in that product. So if you are a masochist and you are on board with constantly being told no, and constantly being critiqued about your appearance and how you look and your weight and your mannerisms, then jump on in.
Yeah.
I would tell people, go to college and get your degree in whatever you want to get your degree in.
Yeah.
You can worry about acting training later. Do not go to school and say, oh, I want to get a theater degree. If you do that, if you get an acting degree, you have to get a double major of some sort, because most actors don't make a lot of money acting. So if you only have a theater degree, you're kind of limiting yourself to being an actor or being a teacher.
Yeah.
So go get your degree in whatever. And a lot of the times the degree, whatever your degree is in, my bachelor's is in international studies and Spanish with a minor in history. My master's is in administration of justice, so criminal justice with an emphasis on police administration. All of those things I bring to the table as an actor, and that's what you want, is you want to have a wide array of experiences you can bring to your performances.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that do not move to LA or New York right off the bat. There are so many people here. You will become homeless. I've seen it happen so many times.
Yeah.
You won't be able to make ends meet. Go to Atlanta, go to Chicago, go to a market where they film some things and get some things under your belt. And Atlanta is getting kind of overrun right now as well. So if you can find another market where they film, recreation shows or local commercials, start out in that market, do as much as you can, then make a move to a different market. When you get in that market, you have to seek out classes at reputable acting studios there. You have to. You can't be somebody who says, I'm naturally good. You may be naturally good, but do you know camera angles? Do you know set tech terminology? Do you know lenses? Do you know all of these things? If the answer is no, you're going to waste time and money on set, and nobody will hire an actor who wastes time and money on set.
Yeah. So
that's what I would say. And you just have to keep things in perspective. You can outwork most people, and that's what you have to focus on. Is how can I work harder? Mm-hmm. We cannot focus on, I'm going to be the most well-connected. because we're not. People have been in Hollywood for, generations and generations.
Yeah.
You have to work on what you can control, and that's something we can control as vets.
Yeah, that's all good. That's all good stuff. What is I asked this to Shannon. Is Hollywood the city of broken dreams or the city of angels?
I tend to see it as the city of dreams. And it's just because so many things can happen. And I've had plenty of friends move here to be actors or musicians, and they've ended up finding the love of their life and settling down as, maybe a teacher in Missouri or something.
Yeah.
There are so many things that can happen here. And some of it's up to you, some of it's luck, some of it's happenstance. But I never choose to see the negative in it. I've certainly seen people struggle. I've seen people become homeless. I've seen people, all these different things. But at the end of the day, if you come here with a good plan and money in the bank and education, and you plan everything meticulously, the odds of that happening are pretty low.
Yeah.
I just think that people come here and they don't understand how incredibly difficult it is.
Yeah.
They don't understand that. And you have to know that this is one of the most competitive industries in the world.
Yeah.
And for one role, the role I just booked on Hawaii Five-0, they had thousands of submissions. I don't even know how many auditions they had, but, to book one role when there's thousands of submissions, what are the odds of that? It's almost astronomical when you think of the odds of booking something and then booking something else and booking something else.
Yeah.
It's difficult. You have to be prepared for that.
It's funny also, something else to put in perspective is that you may not be the first selection. You may be the second selection, and there should be no pride attached to that. And I know this for a fact. When I think right before we started, I told you I was interning at West Point. They have a Center of Enhanced Performance section there, and it was just an internship. Unpaid, no room and board, and they were like, go at it. Everything here is yours. You can go through all the files. And I just so happened to come across the file of prospective interns, right? And I'm like, oh, well, let me see where I sat. Like, who else was my competition? And I found out through being nosy that I was only given that intern, and I haven't told this to Jenn yet, and I'm sure she's going to listen to this, but I saw that I was only given that position because the person who had been selected was not able to do it any longer. However, I was a fan favorite when I got there, to say the least, And
you're number, so what? I mean, you were number 2 of hundreds of people.
Yeah.
So I'm the same way you are. You can never take being number 2 because you don't know why you were number 2. You don't know why you were number 3. The fact is you had an opportunity and you took advantage of it, and that's what matters. And you were still number 2 of how many people?
But I was number 1 in their heart. Yeah. No, and that's what it is. Like, it doesn't matter where you fall in line when you get the opportunity. Like, what do they say? Luck is when preparation meets opportunity, right? Preparation. That's what luck is. If you have the opportunity and you don't have the skills, guess what? You're not going to be prepared, and you're not going to have the opportunity ever again. And so I was lucky to have the opportunity, but I was prepared, and that sounds a lot like what you're saying, is that, be prepared. And being here in LA, it doesn't guarantee you success. Why don't you create success elsewhere?
I had a similar situation. I had shown up for a commercial. I had shown up for commercial fitting, which is where they give you the clothes, and nothing fit me, and it was all way too small. And I remember the costumer was getting frustrated with me, and she was saying, "You're lying on your size card. You're trying to be thinner than what you are." And she was kind of chewing me out. And she said, and what size shoe do you wear? I said 11s, because I'm huge, almost 6 feet tall. And she said, "Your size card says a 9. And I'm like, "Ma'am, can I see this size card? Because what woman is going to lie about her feet and be miserable all day?"
Yeah.
So she brings me the size card. And at the time I had a pixie haircut. It's another redhead with a pixie haircut. It is not me. So I find out that she was booked first for the spot, couldn't do it, and then they brought me in.
Gotcha.
Didn't matter to me. I was happy to be there.
Yeah. It sucks to be her.
Yep. I looked at it and said, well, seems to me I'm going to be getting the money and I'm going to be getting this commercial. And coincidentally, that commercial was one that my son, because it was a commercial that played in Latin America, and my oldest is adopted from Colombia. He saw this commercial repeatedly in Latin America. So it's just weird how that worked out, because he was like, Mom, I remember being in the orphanage and seeing that commercial.
That's funny. That's awesome.
So, you know, I could have been all butthurt. I'm their second choice. I don't care. Who went home with the money in the pocket?
Yeah. So that moves into what I actually wanted to kind of end this on. You mentioned a few times that you adopted, right?
Yes.
And this is not something that we prepped before this, but I'm absolutely curiously interested. What, and if, of course, if you're comfortable talking about it, but what was the process of choosing adoption? And then, you know, for anybody who's thinking about adoption, what are some key points that you can give to those individuals about going through the process and, you know, making, because I know I don't know this, but I assume that there's some mental decisions that you have to make by yourself at night when nobody's there to bounce stuff off of.
So I would say, and I'll preface this by saying I'm a huge advocate for adoption. I'm always an open book on it, and I always want to help educate people because it's a cause that's near and dear to my heart, and it's something that's changed my life and made me a better person. My children are such an incredible gift. And I think, you know, it was something I'd never knew anyone growing up. I was not adopted. It was just something that I always wanted to do from the time I was young. And I think, honestly, it stemmed from, in my childhood, not feeling like I was wanted, not feeling like I was important. And I think that I kind of put that together as I have a family, and I feel this way in aspects of my life. What about children without families? So it was just something that resonated with me, that I never wanted a child to feel the way I felt. So I think that's what had always driven me. My husband and I had talked about having children, and we always knew that we were going to adopt, have biological children, adopt. It was just always on the horizon. A lot of people will end up adopting because they're not able to have biological children. That wasn't the circumstance for us. It wasn't a plan B. It was always just there. And we had tried 3 different countries. We had tried Colombia, which is where my husband's from. He came here as a child and joined the military, and we met in the military, but he was adopted from, he was born in Colombia. So we had gone through adoption there, and they had turned us away because they had a very, very long wait. So next we went to South Korea, and they said, your husband and you are too far apart in age. We only adopt to people who are 7 years apart in age. They have some weird rule. My husband and I are 11 years apart. So we weren't eligible there. And then we went to China, and China went from 12 months to 4 years. And if you get pregnant anytime during your adoption process, most countries cancel the adoption and you lose your money. So we didn't want to take that chance. So we sat on it for a while. And then in 2013, I went to Uganda to work with a nonprofit, and I was teaching there. I went back in 2014, and I've stayed active there. I'm still sponsoring 2 children that I taught when I was there, sponsoring their education so that they can go to school. And it was just near and dear to my heart, being in Uganda, being with Ugandans, living in a village with no electricity or no plumbing, seeing how many orphans there were. I didn't understand the extent of it before I went. When I came home, I had said to my husband, I said, you know, Uganda has, at the time, it was estimated 2 million orphans. And in Uganda, you're an orphan if you're missing one parent, because a one-parent household is generally not sustainable there. So the numbers are inflated because of that. But I said to him, I said, there's lots of children in Uganda. Maybe we're looking at the wrong place. But I wasn't sure if I was prepared to parent an African-American child in today's society. That was a serious concern of mine. Can I do this well? Am I able to do this?
What was the concern?
My concern was, you know, am I going to be able to parent him as an African-American mother would? Do I know about his cultural issues and social dynamics, and even something as simple as hair and skin care?
Like in This Is Us.
I wanted to make sure that I was the best possible parent for my child.
Yeah.
And I had talked to people about it, and they said, if you and your husband can't do it, then who could do it? You guys are so suited for this.
Yeah.
So we adopted our son. He was 18 months when we met him. He was 2 years old when we brought him home. He's 4.5 now, and he's the love of our lives.
Yeah.
And last year we went to Colombia to adopt. My husband went to the top of the list because he's Colombian, and adopting Colombians go to the top of the list.
Yeah.
We brought our son home now, he was 10 when we met him. Now he's 13. And they are the best of buds. They're the best buds. They're the best of friends,
really?
my sons. And it was such a wonderful decision for us. And I would say if you're interested in adoption, you have to know the difference between domestic and international, why there are drawbacks to both. There are lots of kids in the foster system, which if we adopt again, we would probably adopt domestically through the foster system because there's so many children there that need homes, and so many children of color that need homes. And there's a large emphasis on domestic adoption. We want a healthy white baby.
Yeah.
To me, love is love is love. And once you have that child, race is irrelevant at that point. So if you're interested in adopting, join Facebook groups, ask questions, read up, because if it wasn't for these Facebook groups, and there's a lot of drawback to social media nowadays, but this is one of the good things.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't know who to turn to when something happens with my son and I say, is this indicative of this or is this indicative of that?
Yeah.
It's just a wealth of knowledge at your fingertips. So definitely look into those groups. Know that adoption can be costly sometimes, but there are grants out there to help.
Yeah.
There are children who need homes.
Yeah.
So it'll be a lot of paperwork, and it will be a lot of exams, mental and physical, and counseling. It will be a lot of these things, but every single signature we got, every single document we had notarized, everything was worth it for my children. Every tear of possibly not getting them, every emotion, everything was worth it.
Yeah.
And it is worth it. So don't let it deter you, because children need a home, whether that's a mom and a dad or a single parent or two dads, two moms. These kids need homes.
Yeah.
And they need people to love them.
Yeah. And don't give up on the process.
Don't give up. And you know what? I needed my 2 little boys to love me too.
Yeah.
It's not just me, I'm giving love. No, these boys have completed our lives.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I want to wrap up, right? I'm interested more, especially now being gone the last summer and then coming home and trying to play parent, and play husband and play family man. But like I'm seeing that I'm talking about parenting more and more. And I want to talk to other veteran parents, right? Because you have the benefit of coming from a family that has 2 veteran parents, but I always have this conversation with my wife. It's like, you haven't seen the Marine Corps Robert come out,
Right.
And I know it's a benefit to her and my son that I haven't put his little butt on a quarterdeck or anything like that. But, no, let me not say that. My wife thinks I'm a little hard, and I think I'm very soft. So, where do you find yourself coming into parenting from a veteran perspective? Like, how do you see yourself attacking building structure and giving love and allowing space? Because my little guy's 4.5 too, right? So, like, I try to give him enough independence where it gives him, like, he can become interested in things, but, like, not enough independence where he's, like, talking back to me and telling me what's up, Like, how do you play Navy veteran in a house full of little people?
My husband and I are very strict parents. Like I said earlier, our son did not watch television until he was 3.
Correct.
So we are very strict and very tough. And sometimes that doesn't go over well in the adoption groups, because we talk a lot about trauma and we talk about how kids need A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And I give my kids as much love and as much, affection. I give them all of these things, but I'm also very tough on them, and I expect a lot out of my children.
Yeah.
And I think that scares a lot of parents off, especially in the adoption community. But what I've noticed is I often tell my son, the only person who's thinking that he can't do something right now is you.
Yeah.
I know that you can do it, and you are doing this Jedi mind thing where I can't do it. You can absolutely do anything. And I think for him, he's never had an adult look at him and say, you can absolutely do that.
Yeah.
He's only had doubt in his life.
Yeah.
So it is my job as his parent to both of my sons to empower them, to tell them you can be anything you want to be.
Yeah.
And you can do anything that you want, and the only limitation is you. And we talk to them a lot about mental toughness. My son, my 4-year-old, like most 4-year-olds, they try to kill themselves on a daily basis and jump off of things and do crazy things. And you're constantly just trying to, keep them corralled. But when my son jumps off the back of the couch, I don't tell him don't do that.
Yeah.
I don't say that, because he has to learn. And
yeah.
He's a tough one.
Yeah.
He's a tough one. A lot of physical fitness goes in. My son and I are training for a half marathon. My 13-year-old, when he gets in trouble, he does push-ups. This is very ingrained in who I am. But what I've seen is he came here, and within 7 months, he was functional in English.
Yeah.
And yet I see other kids in the same program as him who've been here 3 years who are not functional in English.
Yeah, yeah.
So yes, we are tough on him. We expect a lot out of him, but he also gets a lot of privileges and rewards.
Yeah.
And so, it works out. It works well for him. He has the structure that both of them have, the structure they never had, and kids thrive on structure.
Yeah.
And I have seen them blossom.
Yeah.
So I have no regrets, and people are free to parent their children the way that they want. But I don't have issues with my children's behavior like a lot of people do, because my children are very, very respectful. Even my 4-year-old will open a door and he'll say, "After you, ma'am," and he'll hold open the door.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that a lot too. Since I got back a couple of weeks ago, I've been really harping on, he likes to say, yeah. And
I don't like that.
Yes. I want to say, yeah.
We're the same way. We're the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I always tell him, I said, we don't say yeah to grown-ups. We say yes, ma'am, or yes, sir.
Yeah.
Because all of his peers, yeah. Or they'll say, "Hey, Susan." And I said, "That's not Susan. That's Mrs. Jones.
Yeah.
We don't refer to people like that."
Exactly. Yeah. He's starting to come around where I hear him, like yesterday was my first day hearing him say yes without me having to correct him. And so it's going on. But, little 4-year-old, I want to say yeah. Well, you're not going to say yeah to adults, buddy. That's not how this is going to work.
Yep. And I do think it's one thing if you're very strict with your kids, but you don't give them a lot of privileges. Like my kids, they both play soccer. They have a lot of stuff. We have season tickets to the water park. So it's a lot of fun and a lot of great things too, but it's all behavior dependent. So we just don't have issues like that. Not to say that, 13-year-olds and 4-year-olds don't have some behavioral issues, but compared to, what I see on social media with a lot of my friends and acquaintances, we just don't have it.
Well, Jen, I do want to be mindful of your time, but I do want to ask one thing, because I think it's important, and I think it's, I think I'm not doing a service to the ladies who listen to the podcast if I don't ask the strong women who join me on this podcast to give advice to the women of the military, because, it's a very privileged thing to be a man in the military. I can't look away from that, right? So I want to ask you to give some honest words of advice to female heroes that serve and that have served, that are going through the whole transition process or looking to build up in their life. So
I would say that, I think women today who are serving or who have recently gotten out, they definitely have the power of technology behind them. Because when I was in, if something had happened that was sexual harassment or something that couldn't be proven, we didn't have recorders on our phones to kind of tell that story. It was just kind of, a woman's word against a man's word. And most of the time it was just culture of silence, because that's how it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, thankfully, I believe from what I've heard, they are serving in a more professional type military than I think kind of what I was dealing with when I was in, just because of technology and because of social standards have changed. With that being said, you have to know your own worth. So if you're dealing with something that you feel is detrimental to you as a female soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine, you have to deal with that and not allow people to steamroll you. And when you get out, you still have to stand for your own self-worth and know that you are a veteran bringing very, very applicable skills into the workforce. And I think as women, some women prefer not to refer themselves as veterans, and they prefer to just kind of put that behind them. But we bring so much, not only because of our experience in the military, but also the different perspective we bring as women to the workforce. And working in a traditionally male type occupation, for however long you are in the military, you can go into any civilian career and just absolutely crush that. So that would be my advice, is if you are dealing with something, don't back down, be respectful, be professional. And then once you get out, and I guess that could apply to people when they get out if they deal with those things. But once you get out, know your own worth.
Yeah.
And as a veteran, especially a female veteran, you have already overcome so many things in this world. So to allow a civilian employer to kind of deter you or turn you away or look the other way, it's just not feasible based on your experience. But you have to know your own worth and advocate for that.
That is beautiful. And that's true. I watched way too many female veterans in the college scene kind of succumb to being overbullied by, the large male population, and then, moving into the working world, the same thing. So, but I've had a lot of, especially, as a civilian, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of strong females. And I think it's very important that you're getting on here, that I have the ability to have strong women to come on here. And that's why I was saying it's a disservice if I don't allow you to talk directly to women veterans.
Well, I would like to add one more thing.
I can't do that.
Well, I would like to add one more thing about specifically for people who have dealt with MST, who are out of the military or who are getting out of the military. I talk to a lot of female veterans who've dealt with sexual trauma during their time in, and I would always say to them, remember that you are no one's victim. Mm-hmm. You are not a victim.
Of course.
You are a survivor. You have overcome.
Mm-hmm.
And the best thing that you can do is to just kick ass and slay at life, because you cannot allow that person or those individuals to have any more control of your life than they've already had.
That's right.
And I say this speaking from experience. I'm not on a pedestal looking down. You have to take control of your own life and say enough is enough. Yeah. You may have influenced that moment in time and the time afterwards when I dealt with it, but no more. So ladies, survivor, victim, it doesn't exist. You are a victor.
That's right.
And also to the men, I know this is directed towards the ladies. I'm not saying that men don't deal with those circumstances as well. If you have gone through this, regardless of gender, remember that you are a survivor and a victor.
Victorious.
Yes.
What's totally weird segue. What's and it's not, because when you were saying that, I was thinking about The Handmaid's Tale.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, what are you watching on TV? What's your favorite show on TV right now?
You know what I just recently started watching is Yellowstone with Kevin Costner, and it's just because it's so different than anything else that's on TV.
Uh-huh.
And it reminds me of home, the good things of home, the beautiful parts of home.
Yeah.
And I'm really enjoying it. The casting's amazing. The cinematography is amazing. The direction's amazing. The only thing I'm kind of like, meh, is one of the main female characters is constantly naked. So for kind of no reason. So as an actress, I kind of deal with that a lot of being asked to take my clothes off. And I never have an issue with it if it's for a purpose, but if it's not for a purpose, then it gets kind of, okay, well, this person did it and this person did it. So if they would just clamp down on the nudity a wee bit, I
Yeah.
would be a happy camper. Not because I'm offended, just because I feel like it places unrealistic expectations on other women. And with that being said, I do applaud that actress for doing what she wants to do. And if she's comfortable with that, she can do that. But it definitely is something that is unlike anything else on TV right now. And of course, I'm eagerly awaiting the return of Game of Thrones, like any good TV watching person.
Nerd.
Yes, nerd. Well, I didn't. Yeah, we're nerds.
What show would you say yes to immediately if they called right now? What's your dream show?
Oh gosh. Well, Yellowstone.
Okay.
Oh gosh, Game of Thrones, of course, but they're done filming. What is this
Wait,
show?
is this the last season?
Yes, I believe they already wrapped up filming and now they're just in post-production. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I would say any procedural. Oh gosh, if like SVU or if Law and Order came back on, I just love procedurals and there's not a lot of them anymore. So.
Yeah. How much more time? Can I ask that? What's Stranger Things looking like?
Oh, we can't talk about any of
that. I know.
Yeah,
I had to ask.
I mean, out of respect for Matt and Ross and Sean, I kind of don't say anything at all because what happens is actors will say things and it'll just be tiny little snippets, but then the tiny snippet in itself doesn't make a difference. But then once you pair it with another snippet and another snippet and another snippet, then these blogs come on and start, trying to create whatever it might be. To stay in the clear, mom is always the word with me.
Well, I definitely enjoy that it's back in the 80s. It's
the best.
Yeah.
I was such a fan before I got cast and I just loved it. So
yeah. Well, I'm beyond elated that we finally connected. Jenn, thank you so much for again being patient with me and dealing with rescheduling and
of course.
Yeah.
We were thwarted by technology and we need like a millennial techie or something to save us.
1,000, like in our pocket,
Yes.
Like, why is this not working right now? Can you come out of my pocket and help me? Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Robert. And it was just such a pleasure talking to you. And it was nice to talk in depth about some things I haven't talked about in a while. So
yeah. And you know what? You're the Vet is absolutely a platform that you're able to tap back into anytime you want. If there's something that you want to promote, this is a platform for you forever. And I thank you for being a part of it. And I thank you for sharing your experience. And so,
and I'm always open on social media. I get a lot of messages and I try to return, most of them as long as it's something applicable. So if somebody's interested in whatever it may be, television or film or adoption, I'm always open to talking with people. That's the beauty of social media is being able to talk to anybody at the touch of a button.
That's right. Do you have anything that we didn't talk about you want to touch on before we split?
No, I think we're good. Yeah, I think we're good. My episode of Hawaii Five-0 is airing mid-October, so whenever I find out a definitive release date, I'll let you know.
Okay. And then most likely this might go out around that same time.
Oh, hey. Sounds good.
Okay. Well, Miss Jenn, thank you again. And for those of you who stuck around for this conversation, thank you for sticking around. Please tap into social media and reach out to Jenn. I will provide all of her information on the show notes. So if you want to reach out and inquire more about something you've heard today, or maybe something brought something up and you just want to share it, please reach out to Jennifer Marshall on Facebook, Instagram. Are you on Twitter?
I am.
I'll have all that stuff for you so you don't have to guess, and I don't have to guess right now. And please share the episode and let others know that You're the Vet is a platform for you and for family members of veterans and anybody who's just interested in being more successful at their life. So it doesn't even have to be a veteran. So with that being said, you are a hero. Live like one. I want to thank you for listening to another episode of You're the Vet, and please, again, share this with your friends, share this with your family, share this with other veterans, and share this with anybody who is interested in podcasts and just wants to hear good stories. Please go to the social media sites of You're the Vet and like and follow them. Engage with the community, engage with me. Make sure you head on over to you'rethevet.com to check out other episodes from other amazing veterans out there doing amazing things. And when that pop-up comes up, put your email in there and subscribe to the email list so that I can keep you updated with new conversations with new guests, as well as things that's going on in the community. So last but not least, please head on over to iTunes or whatever you're listening to You're the Vet on, and please write a review. Again, thank you for tuning in once again, and remember, you are a hero. Live like one.